They poured water on my hands and started hitting them with a taser. At that moment, it was the most painful sensation. I was electrocuted, just like other people were. They hit me on the head, they hit me in the ribs, on the right side of my body. They put a blue plastic bag over my head, tightened it, and I began to suffocate. At the moment when I began to suffocate, they put a hand over my mouth and put a taser on my buttocks in the crotch area. I think, apparently, it was a taser, and they started an electric current. When I was interrogated, apparently someone was brought into the adjacent room again, so I heard everything clearly. There were electric shocks and screams. Some names, surnames, and addresses. I said I would only cooperate with the investigator in the presence of my lawyer. Then they put a hat on my face and took me out into the woods behind the stadium.
This is what the consequences of dehumanization lead to. All these people are just like you. The only difference is how and what they believe in. They harm no one and infringe on no one's rights. All they do is express their views on the world and life differently. For this alone, they are publicly stripped of their humanity, slandered, and targeted by society, law enforcement, and security agencies. Even some law enforcement officers bound to follow orders understand this is absurd. They are ashamed to carry out these orders but cannot disobey. As a result, ordinary people branded by anti-cultists, along with their families, children, and loved ones, suffer immense hardships.
I'm now talking about citizens. Surely they are being taken care of by banning this cult, first and foremost, right? But we'll discuss that further. At this very moment, when they exist somewhere out there, we see them only on the internet, appearing in some news stories. So they...
Actually, we neither see nor hear them precisely because there is this persecution. Hence, they are now hiding, sitting quietly, and waiting to see how it will all end. Because if it weren't for that, you would see them everywhere now.
I cannot avoid quoting the words of President Putin. On December 11th, 2018, he said, "We should treat representatives of all religions equally. We should not classify representatives of religious communities as some kind of destructive, not to mention terrorist organizations." Of course, this is complete nonsense. Jehovah's Witnesses are also Christians. I don't understand why they should be persecuted. So, what do we persecute them for?
Firstly, I disagree with President Putin that Jehovah's Witnesses are Christians. They are not Christians. Christians are those who believe in divinity in Christ, while Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in the deity of Christ. They are Jehovists. Their main god, whom they believe in, is Jehovah, so according to the rules, they should be called Jehovists.
But they don't deny Christ.
However, they don't consider him God. Muslims do not deny Christ either, but they don't consider him God. Muslims are not Christians. So this...
But Muslims are not banned, while Jehovists are...
Muslims are not, but Jehovists are banned. This is my position.
You might ask, why do law enforcement officers who are supposed to protect people uphold the law and safeguard the democratic rights of everyone, openly exhibit hatred towards innocent people, insult them, and cause severe physical harm? Because just like in the times of Nazism, the leaders of the anti-cult movement have subjected these law enforcement and security personnel to propaganda, deliberately warping their thinking, imposing the image of an enemy, and manipulating their perceptions.
The new presidential decree is changing the situation. We are not abandoning our mission of presence that has proven to be very effective in missionary work. But now, under the new strategy, we will act more openly, without fearing external persecution, which, I must admit, does happen. There are people in power structures who find our activities irritating and unacceptable. Now, such an attitude towards us and our work will be seen as opposition to the presidential decree. I've been collaborating with law enforcement and military agencies for many years, giving lectures to their personnel about the essence of modern cultism, which is poorly understood in society. This is despite the church paying very close attention to anti-cultist activities. I've been dealing with this issue for 30 years myself. In my presentations, I have to explain a lot to cadets, law enforcement officers, and military personnel. I call the new presidential decree a real gift to us, Orthodox missionaries. In the section Expected Results of the Implementation implementation of this strategy, it is stated that this strategy should contribute to stabilization of the social and political situation in our country, as well as to the spiritual and civic unity of the peoples of the Russian Federation, including through the activities of the Russian Orthodox Church and the broad Orthodox mission that enlightens and educates all peoples. Tuck your feet, down on the floor, down.
According to the Memorial Human Rights Center, as of April this year, at least 635 Jehovah's Witnesses have been persecuted in Russia, with no fewer than 568 people facing criminal charges.
I hoped he would leave for an hour or two. However, by evening, I realized he wouldn't return either today or probably even tomorrow.
I couldn't sleep for several nights. It was terrifying for me when evening came.
Our family's life started to divide into before and after. The feelings we experienced that evening, humiliation, moral and physical abuse, and much more.
But when militants in camouflage break in like that to old frail people, that shocks me.
Think about it. Law enforcement officers who took an oath and are obligated to protect the citizens of their country are attacking peaceful members of an unjustly branded, cornered, and discredited organization. They no longer see these individuals as citizens or even as people, but as soulless, inferior beings because anti-cultists have labeled them with a yellow star for believing in God differently. These are the Nazi methods imposed by anti-cult organizations. First, the label cult is applied by anti-cultists, and then the state assigns the status of extremism. Anti-cultists successfully use these methods not only in Russia, but also in Europe and worldwide. The very existence of anti-cult organizations violates one of the fundamental human freedoms, the freedom of conscience and religion. To deprive someone of the ability to believe in what they choose is to strip them of a basic need, similar to the need for food or drink. It's as if you were forbidden to eat bread because a bunch of radical extremists decided you aren't even human. And if you're not considered human, you can't behave like one. This means you don't deserve humane treatment and cannot have human rights and freedoms. To help you understand what these people branded as cult members by anti-cultists and no longer protected by the law feel, let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're at home, sitting down for dinner. Suppose you have a habit of eating bread in a particular way. Maybe you prefer to separate the crust from the crumb and eat them separately, meaning you simply eat bread differently than most people. Now, because of this, the police forcibly break into your home, turn your personal belongings upside down, damage your property, scare your children, beat you, and arrest you. How would you feel in such a situation? That is precisely how those targeted by anti-cultists feel today. What wrong have these people done? They did not break into others' homes, they did not violate the law, and they did not force their beliefs on anyone. Unlike the way the dominant religion is imposed in some countries, they did not infringe on others' rights. They simply ate bread differently because it suited them better. But someone didn't like that, so they were stripped of their humanity.
The persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia has been widely condemned both by the general public within Russia and internationally, by representatives of human rights organizations and officials from various countries. The European Court of Human Rights, ECHR, ruled that the persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia violates human rights. However, the persecution continues to this day, and instigators of hatred and informational terrorism, such as Alexander Dvorkin and his associates, have not been held accountable or received the punishment they deserve. Charge: dehumanization. The denial of individuals in any religious or ideological group their status as human beings is an activity aimed at denying human rights, and is qualified as acts, methods, and practices of terrorism. The stance of leaders of anti-cult organizations, such as Fekris, than razzias, that the members of what they call cults or sects are not considered to be humans directly violates the rights of such people to legal capacity, which guarantees that every person is regarded as an individual with rights. By their statements and actions, representatives of anti-cult organizations deny the principles of pluralism, one of the most important democratic pillars. Accordingly, under the definition in the resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly on June 22, 2023, this activity is considered terrorism.
An additional decision on liquidation due to extremist activities has been adopted and entered into force.
They put a submachine gun right to his forehead, pushed him back, and started shouting, "Where's the family? Where is your family?" Tell me, what are you detained for?
For my faith in God.
Lift your head. Look here.
And what kind of literature did they find at your home?
Bible and other Christian books.
Yeah, I got scared.
Criminal scheme by anti-cult terrorists.
So, let's summarize. The typical scheme of terrorist actions by the anti-cult movement against a targeted group follows universally precise steps. It begins with labeling the group as a cult or a sect, continues with stigmatizing the group in public opinion, fabricating accusations and criminal cases, and ends with discrimination against members of the targeted group, persecution, and the use of physical violence, up to murders. According to this model, anti-cult terrorists can persecute absolutely any group of people, whether religious or secular. It doesn't matter. The most crucial steps are labeling and initiating a media campaign to discredit the victim in the media. Once this is achieved, implementing the remaining steps is only a matter of time.
In the course of organizing persecution against targeted groups, members of anti-cult movements and their accomplices engage in a range of criminal schemes, such as criminal schemes implemented by representatives of the anti-cult movement, spreading and implementing extremist ideology, inciting conflicts on religious grounds, conducting provocations against members of religious organizations based on religious hatred and/or commercial interests, including using informal connections within law enforcement and other government agencies, fabricating administrative and criminal cases against religious organizations and their members through corrupt connections, manipulating judicial examinations concerning religious associations, preparing false witnesses for court proceedings, public funding fraud, engaging in fraudulent activities,